I never imagined I'd have to tell this story like this. But the moment my mom called to say my runaway sister had returned after more than a decade, I knew things were about to get messy again. I headed to my mother's house with my son Ryan, and the very first thing I noticed? A pair of women's heels by the front door. I wasn't surprised. I had a bad feeling already, but I still wasn't prepared to see her, standing there in nothing but underwear, looking smug and way too comfortable. She glanced at me, laughed, and said, "I'll be taking the luxury high-rise and that rich husband of yours. Poor people like you should just stick to part-time jobs." Then a voice came from behind her, calm but sharp. "Too bad. Sleeping pills don't work on me anymore." It was Matt, my husband, stepping out without a hint of panic. He looked disheveled, shirt hanging off his shoulder, scratching his head like he'd just rolled out of bed. And yeah, if someone else had walked in, they might have thought something happened between him and my sister. But I knew better. Matt let out a short laugh. "She tried to drug me. Thought I'd be an easy catch, I guess. But my brain doesn't shut off unless I make it." Let me back up for a second. My name is Paul Thomas Anderson. I'm 34 years old, and I work for an organization that protects and promotes America's classical culture. Matt, my husband, is 3 years younger. He used to be one of my juniors in university. Now he's working on his PhD in American classics, still deep in research and writing his dissertation. Because his schedule is more flexible, Matt takes care of things I can't always get to. He picks Ryan up from school, handles the laundry, even does most of the cooking. And I'm not just saying this, he's actually better at housework than I am. He may not be a master chef, but he's efficient, clean, and incredibly thoughtful. When we first got serious, I told him honestly, "I can take care of our finances. Can you handle the rest?" And he did, beautifully. My parents weren't thrilled at first. His weren't either. I remember his mom asking, "Are you turning our son into a gigolo?" But all that feels like a distant memory now. After talking things through, about our future, our son, our needs, Matt and I got married. It was an unconventional setup, sure, but we were happy. Our little family worked. Then, out of nowhere, that Tuesday afternoon happened. I was wrapping up at work, ready to pick up Ryan for once. Matt was deep into his thesis, when my phone rang. It was my mom. We usually just text, so a call meant something serious. "Paul," she said, her voice trembling, "Vanessa came back." Vanessa, my younger sister. I hadn't seen her since she ran away at 18. She left with some guy, older, rich, flashy, and completely cut ties with us. She disappeared when his company went bankrupt. She'd gotten tangled up in debt and ran off. "I told her she couldn't stay," my mom continued, "but she left a little girl here." "What?" I asked, stunned. "She left her child?" "Yes," my mom whispered. "She's so small, Paul. I thought she was still in kindergarten, but she's a year younger than Ryan." "Ryan is 9. This girl should be around 8. But she looked much younger," my mom said. "Frail, skin dry, chapped little hands." She gave her some snacks and was bathing her at that moment, but the girl looked completely lost, scared. It was hard for my mom to even speak. I could hear the tears in her voice. "Are you going to kick the child out?" I asked, not even knowing why I said it. "Of course not," my mom snapped gently. "She's our granddaughter." That hit me in the chest. I didn't know this child, but she was family. Then came the real bombshell. "She's on her way to your place," my mom said. "What?" I nearly dropped my phone. Vanessa had apparently found out I married into wealth. Some old acquaintance told her about my rich life, and somehow she tracked me down through a work-related social media account. I do post there from time to time for cultural promotion, but still, it felt like my privacy had been broken. "Dad's already on his way to your place," Mom added. "Just hang in there." I couldn't get more answers. The call dropped. So I picked up Ryan from school, took him to his after-school lesson, shopped for groceries. Matt had been so immersed in writing that he hadn't cooked since the day before. I knew he wouldn't eat unless food was prepped, and I didn't want him collapsing from hunger after all that brain work. While driving home, I decided to tell Ryan a bit about what was going on. "You have an aunt," I said gently. His eyes widened. "You?" "Yeah." "Cool," he said after a moment. "Not surprised, though. Weird stuff always happens around here." He's a sharp kid, way more mature than I was at 9. Maybe he takes after Matt. When I was his age, I was fighting with Vanessa nonstop. Ryan is quiet, thoughtful. Sometimes it worries me. He keeps too much inside. When we finally got home and stepped into the building, the concierge greeted us. Mr. Anderson, your sister Miss Hanson was here earlier. Did you let her in? I asked, already dreading the answer. Yes, she showed ID. We verified it. I'm sorry if that wasn't okay. I sighed. No, it's on me. I should have updated the security list. Has my father arrived? Not yet, sir. I'll let him in as soon as he gets here. We took the elevator up with all the groceries loaded onto a cart. As soon as I opened the door, I saw them, high heels at the entrance. Vanessa's voice called out, loud and smug. Oh, you're back early, she said. She looked older, but not in a bad way. Still dramatic, though. That hadn't changed. Then I saw what she was wearing. Just her underwear. What are you doing? I asked, stunned. Ryan stood there, mouth open. She laughed again. Looks like I hit the jackpot. This condo, your rich husband, they're mine now. But then Matt walked out. He was shirtless, rubbing his eyes. Too bad, he said with a crooked grin. Sleeping pills don't do it for me anymore. She froze. Her plan was unraveling. Matt turned to Ryan. Hey, thanks for shopping, bud. Yeah, Dad, Ryan said, pushing the cart inside like nothing weird had just happened. Come help me unload. As they disappeared into the kitchen, I looked back at Vanessa, now pale, confused, cornered. She had no idea what she'd walked into. Vanessa stood frozen, her confidence melting right off her face. I could see her mind spinning, trying to grasp what had just happened. Her whole little plan, showing up in lingerie, drugging my husband, staging a scene, had backfired beautifully. Matt walked back in with 2 mugs of tea. You must be tired, he said softly, handing one to me. His calm made everything feel even more surreal. Meanwhile, Vanessa glared at me like I'd just stolen her winning lottery ticket. You're not even going to offer me a cup of tea? She scoffed. I don't usually serve people who spike drinks, I replied, not even blinking. And how long are you planning to stay dressed like that? I added. I don't need a half-naked criminal wandering around my home. Criminal? Really? She sneered. This place, it can't be yours. No way. How'd you afford all this? I stared at her. She still didn't get it. You really don't know, do you? She scoffed again. Know what? You work at a cultural whatever place. There's no way you paid for this on a regular salary. I set my tea down. You think this condo is impressive? This is maybe 1% of the assets I currently own. Vanessa blinked. I inherited this apartment fully paid for, no mortgage. And that's not all. I currently own multiple properties, real estate investments, trust funds, tax shelters. My net worth sits around $200 million. Her jaw dropped. For once, she had no words. Matt sipped his tea quietly, watching her spiral. And you? I asked. You show up here with a designer bag, no job, and a daughter who's skin and bones. What were you hoping to get? Sympathy? She's just going through a rough patch, she mumbled. She looks like she hasn't eaten properly in weeks, I said, rising to my feet. You think that purse of yours hides the fact that she's malnourished? I pointed toward her bag, which was still lying open on the table. She's 8, but my mother says she looks 5. Her speech is delayed, her hands are cracked, and worst of all, she begged my mom not to send her back to you. Vanessa flinched. Just then, my phone rang. It was Mom. I picked it up and immediately switched it to speaker. Paul, are you okay? Mom asked. Then she paused. Was that a frog I just heard? Is Vanessa there with you? Vanessa rolled her eyes and shouted, Why do you treat him like gold and me like garbage? What kind of mother plays favorites? What kind of daughter abandons her child? My mom snapped back without missing a beat. You want to talk about fairness? After you ran off, we were shunned by neighbors, mocked by coworkers. Your father's career was nearly destroyed. Only when Paul married into the Cooper family did people stop whispering behind our backs. I glanced at Vanessa. You never even knew about that, did you? She narrowed her eyes. The Cooper family? The old rich people from back home? Yes, I said. I married their eldest son, the one who was sick. You mean the one who was always bedridden? A waste of space? Matt looked uncomfortable. Ryan, he whispered, why don't we take a little break? Ryan nodded and quietly stepped out of the room. Yes, I said, facing Vanessa again. He was frail, gentle, but he was also kind, loving. When we married, he already knew he wouldn't live long. It was his wish to have a family, and I agreed. I went through artificial insemination and carried Ryan while he lay in a hospital bed. Vanessa looked stunned. But why would you marry someone like that? I sighed, because you humiliated our family. And when the Cooper family asked for my hand, it was a chance to help Mom and Dad recover their dignity. She shook her head like she didn't believe a word. I got married at 22, I said. He passed away before Ryan was born. But his parents, they were good to me. They made sure I would be taken care of. They gave me this apartment, these assets, and when I wanted to remarry, they didn't stop me. They said I had already given enough. Matt returned with Ryan, who carried a chessboard. The little guy always knew when to bring comfort back into a room. You see, Vanessa, I continued, this life you're trying to steal, it's not built on luck. It's built on sacrifice, on years of balancing grief, single motherhood, and work. Must be nice to have everything, she muttered. But you don't have nothing, I said slowly. You have a daughter, or at least you did. The room fell silent. Mom said the little girl you dropped off didn't want to go back to you. She cried when she heard your name. What did you do to her? Nothing. Things were just hard, Vanessa yelled. We were moving around a lot. I couldn't find steady work, but I tried. You tried? I said, voice rising. Mom said she found bruises. She said Anna has a dead stare like no child should have. And where's the first baby, Vanessa? The one you were pregnant with all those years ago? Her mouth opened, closed. Then she looked away. Mom's voice, still on speaker, cut through the silence. We know, Vanessa. We contacted your ex-husband. Vanessa's head snapped back. He said you ran away. Left the baby with him. That he's been working odd jobs in a distant state to raise the child on his own. He didn't tell us where he is. Said he didn't want you to find them. I clenched my jaw. So you just left one child behind and destroyed another. You don't understand, she yelled, voice cracking. I had nothing. You had a family, I said. Vanessa stumbled back, grabbing her purse and her clothes. I'm leaving. Matt moved toward her. No, you're not. At the same time, Ryan pulled out a second phone. Grandpa, he said into it, now's the time. A knock sounded at the front door, loud, firm. The police, a voice announced. We have a report of unauthorized entry and suspected child abuse. Vanessa turned white. Dad entered the apartment with the officers. Vanessa, he said coldly, it's been a while. She barely had time to speak before the officers stepped forward, taking her gently but firmly by the arms. One picked up her purse. Matt turned to them. There should be sleeping pills in there. I can do a blood test if needed. I've built some resistance, but the traces should still be there. Thank you, sir, one of the officers replied. Then Mom's voice chimed in from the phone. Paul, can you switch to video? Anna wants to say something. I turned on the camera, and there she was, a fragile little girl in clothes that Ryan had outgrown years ago. Her wrists poked out from the sleeves. Ryan stepped closer to the screen. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm your cousin. I'm 1 year older than you, so I guess I'm your big brother now. Anna's eyes widened. Big brother? And then she smiled. A soft, broken smile. Like she hadn't done that in a very long time. Anna's smile lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough to make my heart squeeze. That tiny flicker of hope. It reminded me why we were doing this, why everything had to change, starting now. As she nodded shyly through the screen, Mom held her close. She's wearing Ryan's old clothes, she said. They're a bit tight, but they'll do for now. Ryan looked proud. They look good on you, he said. Hey, come visit us sometime. Anna's little voice came through. Okay. And just like that, a door opened. Not the literal one in our home, but the one in our hearts, for her. The police wrapped Vanessa in a blanket. She was still in shock, frozen like her brain couldn't keep up with what was happening. She tried to fight it for a moment, yelling, You all think you're so perfect. I have nothing. I've lost everything. I stepped forward. No, Vanessa. You lost everything because of your own choices, not because of us. She turned toward the officer. She hit me. Arrest her too. He raised an eyebrow and gave a half smile. Ma'am, let's not make this worse. Vanessa screamed and thrashed, but the officers didn't flinch. They handled her with professionalism. One of them took the purse and nodded to Matt, confirming they found what they were looking for, sleeping pills. Thank you for helping us document this, the officer said to him. Matt nodded. No problem. I'm happy to get tested if needed. As they escorted her out, Dad stayed behind for a minute longer. His eyes looked tired, but relieved. He walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You did good, son, he said. Thanks, Dad. We'll take care of things from here. She'll be detained for a while. No bail. No one's coming for her. I nodded slowly. After he left, the apartment felt strangely quiet. Ryan returned to his chessboard. Matt sank into the couch, and I just stood there, hands on my hips, taking it all in. It had only been 6 hours since Mom's call. 6 hours. And yet it felt like we'd lived through months of drama. Dad, Ryan asked after a long silence, is Anna going to stay with Grandma and Grandpa? For now, I said, but probably not forever. Why not live here? He asked. Matt looked at me. I took a deep breath. That's what I'm thinking too. Adopting Anna wasn't a spontaneous decision, but after seeing her face, hearing her voice, and learning what she'd been through, I couldn't imagine sending her back to a small town where everyone knew her mother's history, where every time someone looked at her they'd whisper, "That's Vanessa's daughter." She deserved a fresh start, and I was going to give it to her. A few weeks later, Mom and Dad brought Anna to our place for a visit. She'd cleaned up nicely. Her cheeks were fuller, her hair neatly brushed, but her eyes, those still held shadows. Ryan ran to the door. "Hey, you got even cuter," he said, grinning. Anna giggled and ducked behind my mom's leg. Matt reached over and gave Ryan a playful noogie. "Where'd you learn to flirt like that?" "Dad, stop!" Ryan laughed, swatting his hand. Anna stared at them wide-eyed. Her gaze went from Matt to Ryan and then to me. She looked unsure. "It's okay," I said, kneeling down. "You're safe here." Can I really live with you?" she asked quietly. My heart cracked. I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. This is your home now if you want it." She paused, then nodded, eyes glossy but steady. "Okay." That night, we set up a little bed for her in the guest room. Ryan gave her a stuffed bear he no longer used, and Matt promised he'd teach her how to make pancakes on Saturday mornings. Anna didn't say much, but I could feel something shifting, slowly, gently. We were becoming a family. Over the next few months, life found a new rhythm. I worked. Matt researched. Ryan went to school. And Anna began to adjust. At first, she struggled in class. She was behind in reading and math. But with some tutoring and a lot of encouragement, she started to catch up. She even began to smile more often. Sometimes I'd find her curled up on the couch with Ryan, both of them giggling over some silly cartoon. Other times she'd follow Matt around the kitchen, watching him flip pancakes or chop vegetables. He had this way of making her feel like the most important person in the world. It wasn't all easy. She had nightmares, flashbacks. Some nights, she'd cry herself to sleep and ask if her mom was coming back to take her away. I always told her the same thing. "You're safe here. No one's taking you from us." Eventually, she started believing me. One night, I found her standing at the window, looking out at the city lights. "Uncle Paul?" she said softly. "Yes, honey?" "Can I call you Dad?" I froze. Tears burned my eyes. I walked over, knelt beside her, and said, "I'd be honored." She smiled. Sometimes I wonder what might have happened if Vanessa hadn't come back, if she hadn't left Anna with my parents, if she hadn't tried to drug Matt and force her way into my life. But then I remember that chaos led to something beautiful. Anna, she's our daughter now, legally, emotionally, completely. And despite everything we went through, I wouldn't change a thing. Time passed as it always does, quietly, gradually, like water smoothing out rough edges. Vanessa was formally charged with child abandonment, unlawful entry, and attempted assault, with clear evidence, the sleeping pills, witness accounts, and even Anna's testimony. The case moved quickly. She didn't even try to fight it. Maybe she knew, deep down, that her world had finally collapsed. I was told she broke down during the hearings, not because she felt guilty, but because no one came for her. No friends, no family, no one stood up to speak on her behalf. And in some way, that silence was the loudest punishment of all. Anna never asked about her again. And we didn't bring her up. We chose to move forward. About 6 months after the incident, I took the day off work and picked Anna up from school. She came out, backpack bouncing on her shoulders, holding a paper flower she'd made in class. "Daddy," she called out. That word still catches me off guard sometimes. Not because I doubt it, but because it reminds me of how far we've come. From fear to trust, from brokenness to healing. I scooped her up. "What's this?" I asked, pointing to the flower. "It's for you," she grinned, "because you're the best." I laughed. "Better than pancakes on Saturdays?" Tied," she giggled. We walked home in the early spring light. She told me about her classmates, her teacher, the funny kid who stuck raisins up his nose. It was so normal, so beautifully ordinary. When we got to the apartment, Ryan was already there, doing homework on the dining table. "Hey, Squirt," he said, ruffling her hair. "Hey, Dork," she shot back, grinning. Matt walked in from the kitchen. "Dinner's in 15. Who wants lasagna?" "Me!" both kids yelled at once. Later that evening, we sat around the table, passing bread, sipping lemonade, laughing about nothing in particular. I looked at each of their faces, Ryan's thoughtful eyes, Anna's bright smile, Matt's calm presence. And I thought to myself, this is what happiness looks like. Not perfection, not silence, but this, a table full of noise and life and love. A year passed. Anna grew taller, stronger, and more confident. Her reading improved. She made friends, and most importantly, she laughed more. Real laughter, the kind that shakes her shoulders and makes her snort sometimes. Ryan matured, too. He became protective of his little sister, but never overbearing. He taught her how to ride a bike, how to blow bubbles with gum, and how to build a proper pillow fort. Sometimes they fought, like siblings do, but they always made up. Matt stayed the rock in our home. Patient, steady, occasionally chaotic with his books and deadlines, but always present. As for me, I learned to breathe again, to trust that I wasn't stuck in a cycle of putting out fires, that it was okay to feel joy without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sometimes I'd look out the window of our high-rise, the city buzzing below, the lights flickering like stars, and just feel grateful. Not for the money, not for the apartment, but for the second chance, for the unexpected family we'd become. The day Anna's adoption was finalized, we celebrated quietly. No big party, just the four of us. Matt made a chocolate cake from scratch. Ryan decorated the living room with streamers made out of old homework sheets. And Anna wore a sparkly headband that didn't match her outfit, but she insisted on wearing it anyway. We had dinner, played board games, took goofy pictures. Then, as I was tucking her into bed that night, she asked me a question. "Daddy, are you glad I came?" I sat beside her and brushed the hair from her forehead. "More than you'll ever know." She yawned, pulled the blanket up to her chin. "Even though it was all messy and crazy?" I smiled, especially because of that. Her eyes fluttered closed, and within minutes she was asleep. I sat there a little longer watching her breathe, and for the first time in years I didn't feel exhausted, or anxious, or like I had to keep proving something. I just felt home. Sometimes life gives you more than you expect. Sometimes it gives you back what you didn't even know you needed. Vanessa tried to steal my home, my husband, my peace. But in the end, she gave me something else entirely. A daughter, a reason to grow, and a chance to write a different ending. One filled with forgiveness, one built on love. One that belongs to us, me, Matt, Ryan, and Anna, our little beautifully imperfect family. Together,